In July 1969, Neil Armstrong made history by taking humanity's first steps on the lunar surface, famously declaring, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." The Apollo 11 mission cemented the United States' place as a leader in space exploration and captured the world's imagination. However, despite this monumental achievement, human missions to the moon came to a halt just 3 years later, with the final Apollo mission, Apollo 17, in 1972. Since then, no human has walked on the moon, leaving many to wonder, why did NASA stop going to the moon? To answer this question, we need to look back at the historical, political, economic, and technological circumstances that led to the Apollo missions and why, after a brief period of lunar exploration, the United States turned its attention elsewhere. The Cold War and the birth of the space race. The origins of the Apollo program are deeply rooted in the Cold War, a period of intense rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. After World War II, the two superpowers vied for global influence, often through indirect means such as technological and scientific competition. One of the most prominent arenas for this competition was space exploration. The Soviet Union struck the first major blows in the space race. In 1957, the USSR launched Sputnik 1, the world's first artificial satellite, into orbit. Later that year, they sent the first animal into space, a dog named Laika, aboard Sputnik 2. In 1959, the Soviet Luna 2 probe became the first human-made object to impact the moon. Then in 1961, Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first human to travel into space, followed by Valentina Tereshkova, who became the first woman in space in 1963. At this point, the United States was lagging far behind. In fact, NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, didn't even exist when the first Sputnik was launched. It was established in 1958 as a direct response to Soviet successes. The need to catch up created a sense of urgency and national pride, prompting massive investments in space technology. Winning the space race became not only a scientific goal, but also a symbol of political and ideological superiority. The Apollo program, a monumental effort. While the Soviets achieved numerous firsts, the United States set its sights on an even more ambitious target, landing humans on the moon and bringing them safely back to Earth. This bold goal was famously set by President John F. Kennedy in his 1961 address to Congress, where he declared, "I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth." Thus, the Apollo program was born. The U.S. government poured unprecedented resources into the project. At its peak in 1966, NASA received 4.5% of the federal budget, approximately $5.9 billion at the time, which would be around $43 billion today. Thousands of scientists, engineers, and astronauts worked tirelessly to make Kennedy's vision a reality. Apollo 11 succeeded in 1969, marking a defining moment in human history. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin spent over 2 hours walking on the moon, while Michael Collins orbited above. The United States had not only caught up to the Soviet Union, but had decisively won the space race. The world watched in awe as humans walked on another celestial body for the first time. The waning interest after the space race. Despite the success of Apollo 11, public interest and government enthusiasm for lunar missions quickly began to wane. Several more Apollo missions followed, with the final one, Apollo 17, taking place in December 1972. In total, 6 missions successfully landed humans on the moon. However, once the U.S. had achieved its goal and demonstrated its technological superiority, the driving force behind the moon missions, the political competition with the Soviet Union, began to diminish. The Apollo program was immensely expensive, costing an estimated $150 billion in today's dollars. As the novelty of moon landings wore off and domestic priorities, such as the Vietnam War, social reforms, and economic concerns took center stage, it became increasingly difficult for NASA to justify the cost of continuing lunar missions. Congress and the public began questioning the value of spending billions on space exploration when there were pressing issues at home. With diminishing political will and tightening budgets, NASA's funding was drastically cut. By 2019, NASA's budget accounted for less than 0.5% of the federal budget. The Apollo program, originally planned to include more missions, was scaled back. Apollo 18, 19, and 20 were canceled. The era of human moon exploration came to an end. Proposals that never happened. Interestingly, before settling on crewed moon landings, there were other, more radical proposals on the table. One such proposal was Project A119, a secret plan developed by the U.S. Air Force in the late 1950s that involved detonating a nuclear bomb on the moon to demonstrate America's technological prowess. Fortunately, cooler heads prevailed, and NASA chose to pursue peaceful scientific exploration rather than a dramatic but destructive display. After Apollo, NASA floated various proposals to return to the moon or establish a lunar base, but most of these plans were either shelved or delayed due to budgetary constraints and shifting political priorities. Global interest in the moon after Apollo. Although NASA ended its lunar missions in 1972, other nations continued exploring the moon. Japan, through its Institute of Space and Astronautical Science, launched the Titan spacecraft in 1990. Over the years, countries such as China, India, and members of the European Space Agency have developed their own lunar exploration programs. China, in particular, has emerged as a leader in modern moon exploration. In 2019, China's Chang'e 4 mission successfully landed on the far side of the moon, a first in the history of space exploration. This achievement has led some to speculate about the beginning of a new space race, this time with China taking a prominent role. Unlike the Cold War era, however, modern space exploration is increasingly characterized by international collaboration rather than direct competition. Agencies from different countries often work together, sharing data and technology to advance humanity's collective understanding of space. The rise of robotic exploration. One of the key reasons humans haven't returned to the moon is that robotic spacecraft have become far more capable and cost-effective. Unlike humans, robots don't require life support systems, food, water, or protection from radiation. They can operate for years with minimal intervention and don't face the same risks of injury or death. NASA and other space agencies have successfully deployed numerous robotic missions to study not only the moon but also other planets, asteroids, and the outer reaches of the solar system. These robotic missions provide a wealth of scientific data at a fraction of the cost and risk of crewed missions. NASA's shifting priorities. The International Space Station and Mars. After the end of the Apollo program, NASA shifted its focus to other projects, most notably the International Space Station. Launched in 1998, the ISS represents a major international collaboration involving the United States, Russia, Europe, Japan, and Canada. The station serves as a laboratory for studying the effects of long-term space travel on the human body and developing technologies for future deep space missions. The ISS allows astronauts to live and work in space for extended periods, providing valuable experience that will be essential for future missions to Mars and beyond. Compared to the desolate lunar surface, the ISS offers a more practical platform for conducting ongoing research that directly benefits future exploration efforts. In recent years, NASA and other space agencies have increasingly turned their attention toward Mars. The prospect of sending humans to Mars presents a far greater technical challenge than returning to the moon, but it also offers the potential for even more groundbreaking discoveries. Mars missions have already begun in the form of robotic explorers like Curiosity and Perseverance, and crewed missions are now being planned for the coming decades. The role of private companies. A significant new development in space exploration is the rise of private companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Virgin Galactic. These companies have introduced new competition and innovation into the space industry, drastically reducing the cost of launching payloads into orbit and opening new possibilities for crewed space missions. SpaceX, led by Elon Musk, has ambitious plans to send humans to Mars and has already launched several missions to the ISS in collaboration with NASA. In 2020, SpaceX's Crew Dragon spacecraft became the first privately developed vehicle to carry astronauts to the ISS. Private sector involvement is helping to reinvigorate interest in space exploration and may play a crucial role in future Moon and Mars missions. NASA's return to the Moon, Artemis program. While NASA hasn't sent humans to the Moon since 1972, if you enjoyed this video and learned something new, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us out. And if you want to stay updated on more fascinating space facts, mysteries, and future explorations, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.